Data scientist interviews at Google are not easy. However, there's one round that's way harder than it seems, yet one of the most preparable. And that's the Googleyness and Leadership round, or Google's version of a behavioral interview. My goal is to give you a strong understanding of what this interview evaluates for data scientist candidates, what your interviewers are looking for, some sample questions to practice against, and a couple of tips to crack this round. At the end of this video, I'll share one attribute in Google's rubric that we've seen DS candidates consistently underestimate and a simple path to fixing it. But before that, from the get-go, to make sure you know this information comes from the right source, I'm Nikita. I work at Prepfully. We're an interview prep startup that specializes in one-on-one coaching with folks who've come from your target role and company. At last count, we have 8 data scientists from Google, almost all of them at senior and staff levels. They've helped us create this video. You can book time with our Google data scientists on the Prepfully website if you want more personalized practice. Additionally, we've referenced the official Google documentation that gets shared with candidates who make it to this round. That documentation is linked within our interview guides for data science roles at Google. Now, on to the Googleyness and Leadership interview. First off, Google is quite open about their rubrics. Every Google interviewer assesses you on 4 attributes. The first is general cognitive ability, the second is role-related knowledge, the third is leadership, and the fourth is Googleyness. The G&L round, which is the Googleyness and Leadership round, is one non-technical round dedicated to the last 2. But it's really crucial to understand that every interviewer in your loop is watching for these signals. How you handle a question that stumps you, whether you credit your team, how you deal with ambiguity. So you're being assessed on Googleyness pretty much all day, and therefore don't miss an opportunity to drive home your fit, even on what might seem like a tangential question. Also good to know, some Google DS loops fold behavioral assessments into other rounds rather than keeping a standalone G&L round. Now, let's start with some theory. What is Googleyness? In Google's own words, it's basically 4 things. 1, how you work individually and on a team. 2, how you help others. 3, how you navigate ambiguity. 4, and final, how you push yourself to grow outside of your comfort zone. If you're a data scientist, pay close attention to that third one, because your entire discipline is about bringing structure to ambiguous questions. Your interviewer is going to expect your stories to show this in action. Vague stakeholder asks that you turned into precise analytical questions. Messy data that you turned into a confident decision. This is your home turf advantage in this round. We strongly recommend using it. And leadership then? Google is explicit that it is not about titles. In reality, it's almost the opposite. It's how you've used communication and decision making to mobilize others, including and especially when you weren't officially the leader. In fact, Google's own documentation asks, can you give examples of projects where you demonstrated leadership even if you weren't a formal manager? They want to see if you step up when the situation needs you, even when nobody asked you to. And just as importantly, that you step back and hand off when someone else is better placed. As a data scientist, this is exactly how you operate. PMs, engineers, leadership, people you don't actually manage, but need to influence to make the right decision with your data. Now, let's talk through the way these concepts get assessed. The questions you face will show up in 2 forms. First, past experience questions. These look at how you've handled a non-trivial challenge in the past. They often sound like, tell me about a time when X happened, or give me an example of when you faced situation Y. And expect probing follow-ups like, what did you do then? And what was the result? Your interviewer is looking at 4 things: what you did, why you did it, how you pulled it off, and what you learned. Here's a sample question you might get. Tell me about a time your analysis contradicted what a PM or a leader strongly believed, and then they pushed back. How did you handle it, and what was the outcome? Or another example, this one comes straight out of Google's official prep documentation, word for word. Tell me about a time when you failed to meet a deadline. What did you fail to do? What did you learn? And Google even tells you what to consider in your answer, the root cause and how you applied what you learned to future projects. For both these questions, I've recorded both a decent answer as well as a Google level standout answer. They're available on our website. The second format of questions is hypothetical questions. These evaluate how you would handle a challenge you may not have encountered yet. They often go like, imagine you've been asked to do X. How would you go about this? And here, Google's official documentation again lists 5 things that a strong answer must do. First, your understanding of the problem. Did you outline what factors are relevant and what additional work needs to be done? Second, thoughtful problem solving. Are you gathering information, getting to the root cause and pulling from experience? Third, potential solutions. Does your solution actually answer the question and have you weighed the pros and cons? Fourth, support for your solutions. Why is this the best option despite the cons? What success metrics are you using? Really important, this element gets missed by a lot of folks. And honestly, as a DS, if you of all candidates miss the success metric, that won't be a great look. And finally, strong communication. Structured, logical, balancing brevity and detail. So, I'm going to give you 2 sample questions to practice against. For both these questions, as well as the ones I've given before, try writing out the answers. Then use Prepfully's free AI review tool to see how you did. It's calibrated against Google rubrics specifically. And only after that, go through the sample answers I've created. For both questions, a decent answer and a truly standout answer is available on the Prepfully website. Question 1. You ran an experiment that exposed that a partner team's feature is creating a negative overall effect on your product. You have no authority over them. How do you handle this? Question 2. Let's say your leadership asks you to support a second product area next month. They're falling behind on a launch timeline and urgently need to get back on track. What would you do with the analyses already in flight? Do keep in mind, the answers are going to depend a lot on your target level. A data scientist can get away with a robust story around defending their methodology and communicating clearly for the first question. A senior data scientist will need to show meta trade-off assessments. What would change their mind? What's the cost of being wrong in each direction? And how to de-risk the decision. And beyond that, you need to show how you make the whole process better. How did you set up experiment standards or review processes so that these conflicts get resolved by design rather than by viewpoints? I have 4 tips for cracking this round. First, make sure you get super familiar with the components Google expects to see in your answers. You must make sure you cover them across your answers. Obviously, not all in each answer, but you don't want to leave the interview with your interviewer having to tick the didn't discuss checkbox for any of these. So basically, comfort with ambiguity, helping others succeed, working effectively individually and on a team, pushing yourself to grow outside your comfort zone. You must be able to map every single story you prepare to at least some of these, and equally show that you bring these traits out in other people as well. If you're interviewing for a senior role, it becomes increasingly important to demonstrate influence at scale. Give examples of frameworks, metrics, standards that you set up that enabled PMs and engineers to make awesome data-informed decisions without you in the room. I cannot stress how critical it is that these elements be woven into your answers. They cannot be brute forced in there. There's an element of finesse that's completely necessary to show you both get what Google values and know how to apply it in practical scenarios. And what's more, that you've successfully done so in the past. Second, be concise. Your interviewer needs to take a ton of checkboxes and they will probe with follow-ups. So give them the room to do that. If your opening answer runs past 2 minutes before your interviewer can dig in, you need to aggressively chop it down. Practice with a Google data scientist on Prepfully to make sure you're not cutting out the wrong pieces. Third, prepare your stories using the STAR+ format. Google itself recommends STAR for this round. Structure your answers by describing situation, task, action, result. But then what we've seen successful candidates do is they add the plus. Did you change a process? Did you mentor another data scientist or level up a partner team? Did you raise the experimentation or analytical bar of the whole org? Did you build a reusable metric, a pipeline, or a framework others could benefit from? These are the details that signal you're a senior hire. Do not, I repeat, do not stop at just the STAR or the CAR methodologies. The format is used by 1 million candidates at this point and it's just not enough. Finally, the tip I promised right at the start. The attribute Google over-indexes on and data scientist candidates underestimate is emergent leadership. Read Google's definition of leadership carefully. It explicitly includes helping a team succeed even when you weren't officially the leader. And this matters for DSs especially because they're the candidates most likely to walk into the rounds with stories about brilliant analysis, the model, the methodology, the insight. And the part that they under-index on is the story about the magic that happened next. So when you're crafting your stories, ask yourself, does the story end with the analysis, or does it end with you stepping up, driving the decision through, and changing what the team actually did? Or alternatively, did it end with you learning something amazing that made you a better DS? Or your team better in how it handled decisions? Because Google wants to see you tie your analytical brilliance into something that makes their product and people better. So that's all from me. This is our guidance from Prepfully and our experts on rocking the Google DS, Googleyness and leadership interview. Once you feel ready for some practice or just want a sense check of your prep level, you can book an anonymous mock interview with a Google data scientist or senior data scientist on Prepfully. Link in the description below. We've also linked our deep dive guide, which contains the official Google documentation. If you have follow-up questions, ask in the comments below. And if you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you and good luck.